Grace, peace, and mercy from God the Father of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, hope everybody had a Happy New Year, a great Christmas. Ethan Smith, our choir director, was tired of watching my Bible fall off the edge here all the time, so he made me a little Christmas present. He made me a desk for my Bible, which I thought was kind of cool, so there you go. We're into 2016. This is going to be an exciting year on many regards. So I thought we'd start out with something different that we haven't done before. Talk about peacemaking and what that means. In Matthew 5:9, Jesus is speaking his only sermon that he ever preached is in Matthew, his full-on sermon. And inside of that, he gave us the Lord's Prayer. And before that, he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." You follow along any of our messages that you've missed, any of the music, follow along. We have some baptisms coming up shortly, and so if your child or someone you know needs to be baptized, that's coming up. We're preparing for our 2017 500 Years of Reformation, and in that, I'm thinking how we can upgrade what we can do for the coming years. I was thinking, we educated children for over 64 years. We raised up families for Christ. Can we practice peacemaking for the world? And notice the word is practice. Peacemaking. It's something that we don't really get expert at, but we can practice peacemaking for the world. And that's what I want us to focus on. Luke and Acts is our journey this year. And so that will be the way we get through this year, is looking at the Gospel of Luke and Acts as well. Blessed are the peacemakers. When I was in Washington, D.C., I was just doing a short little series on peacemaking, and when I announced that, I just saw the fear in several of the members' eyes. And so I had to ask them afterward. I said, what's all about, the peacemaking? And they go, well, here's the deal, Pastor Ken. Some of us have such high security clearance that if you talk about peacemaking, you've just jeopardized our jobs. And I go, well, tell me more about that. And the pilot for Air Force One was one of the members, and he says, they asked me before I go on and board the airplane, what I did during the week. Did I attend any peace rallies? And that's part of what allows me to fly the president around. And we had a 3-star general and people who manage the CIA and the FBI and all these people, and they said, well, we have to be careful with peacemaking because we're called to protect the country. And so we just don't want to give the wrong impression. And I respected those people. They knew way more than I did about anything. But I had to ask, can you separate yourself from your jobs? Because you are a child of God. And so we made it through that series. So anyone with a super high security clearance, I apologize for that, and come and see me. So why bother? Why do you even bother talking about this peacemaking thing? Well, St. Maybe was a book from Ann Tyler that she put out. And many of us have, and I have to sit down for this because this is kind of probably the hardest subject or the hardest topic, the hardest way to relate to Christians is through forgiveness and peacemaking. It's the hardest thing that for some of us we'll have to deal with in our lives. And some of you guys got this down. It's like, oh, no problem, Pastor Ken, got this. It's a breeze for me. For many of us, including myself, this is a struggle, and it is practice. For some of us, we've learned something different. We've learned it maybe the wrong way or learned half of it. And so it might be a chance for us to even take a look at how we perceive this idea of peacemaking. And the way you get to peacemaking is through forgiveness, through forgiving and being forgiven. And that's a tough thing for many of us, to forgive and to be forgiven. And Tyler writes a bunch of great books, and one of the books she writes is St. Maybe, and it's about a family. And there's a college student, one going to Harvard, and his brother had just married a woman who had 2 children and was pregnant with a third on the way. They didn't know whose baby that was exactly. But they were married, and so the brother, the young brother going to Harvard, going to school, was home for the summer, and his other brother, the brother that was married, the wife was saying, "Can you come over and babysit the kids for me a couple of days a week during the summer?" He said, "Sure, no problem, I'll do that." And so he was doing that, and noticed that she would come and go, and she really didn't say what she was doing. And so he kind of became a little suspicious, protective of his brother, a little bit suspicious. And she would never say where she was going. So one day she comes home in kind of a new dress and everything, and he's just kind of really suspicious of what's going on here. So he tells his brother, he says, "You know what? I think your new wife is having an affair." The other brother was drinking and became so upset, he got in his car and he drove it into a tree and he killed himself. Well, the new wife became so upset that she couldn't sleep, so she started taking sleeping pills and overdosed on the sleeping pills and killed herself as well. But before she died, she told the brother from Harvard what she was doing. And she had an extra job she was working to save money for the kids for college. And so the brother realized what he had done. He killed his brother and his sister-in-law by his mistake in perception. So he goes and wandering into the local church one Sunday, and he sits to a sermon, and at the end of the pastor is saying, "Does anyone need prayer?" Everybody bow your heads. "Anybody need prayer? Just raise your hand." And he's in the back, and he raised his hand. And so he's trying to duck out of the church. And so the pastor is standing in the back, as good pastors do. They run out there to catch the members and the visitors. And he says, "Did you get an answer to your prayer?" And so Ian, the young man, says, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "What right do you have to ask me about if I get answers to my prayer?" He says, "No, I'm just asking. I saw you raise your hand. And did you get an answer to prayer?" And he says, "Well, let me tell you the story. I need forgiveness. I told my brother that his wife was cheating on him, and she wasn't. She was working a second job, and she became so distraught that she killed herself too. And they have 2 small children, which my parents are going to have to raise now, and they're elderly, and so there's a burden that's going to be placed on them. But I came here for forgiveness, so can you forgive me?" And the pastor says, "No. What you need to do is quit going to school, get a job, and raise your brother's children until they're 18. Pour into them the love that the mother and the father would have given them. And when they're 18, come back and see me, and then we'll talk about whether you have received forgiveness or not." Now, for many of us, that's a harsh thing, because you're supposed to ask for forgiveness and let it go. You're kind of like, "Please forgive me, and I'm on my way. Sorry, but my bad. I'm on my way." But that's not what Jesus had in mind with the Lord's Prayer or the other teachings that he has. That's what you see in the movies. "I'm sorry. My bad." But forgiveness is a whole other thing. Is that the beginning or is that the end of forgiveness for this young man? What do you think? Do you have any situations in your life that require forgiveness, either for you, since you've been hurt, or from you for hurting another? So why bother? Well, one thing is, it could save your marriage, it could save your job, it could save your children's relationship. It could save your life, what we're learning today. This is real down-home, practical Christianity stuff. When I was finishing up my doctorate degree, there was a professor who came in and he couldn't speak very well. He had Parkinson's disease and didn't have a lot to say, had to control his energy because it took him a lot just to get through the day. And so what's the difference when you get a doctorate degree versus other? You receive a high school diploma, you receive a bachelor's degree, you receive a master's degree. but a doctorate you have to take. It's on the table, and you have to take it. And the people around the table are not so easy or eager to give it away. You have to take it from them. And so the one professor says, well, you've gone through 4 years of seminary and now 7 years for your doctorate degree. Let me ask you one thing. Did you learn about Jesus during this time? Did you learn to believe in Jesus? Did you learn to listen to Jesus? Or did you learn to do what Jesus wants you to do? Did you learn to follow Jesus? James says it this way. Do what the God's word says. Don't merely listen to it, because if you do it, you're just going to fool yourself. If you're just a listener, you're just fooling yourself. It's like, well, those who hear the word and don't act, like those who look in a mirror, they walk away, and 2 minutes later, they don't even have an idea who they are and what they look like. For those who just listen. And I understand we're all in different places. Some are just beginning the process. They just want to find out about Jesus. Pastor Scott, I just want to find out. That's all I want. And maybe a little bit of believing in, and so I'll listen. But where God wants to take us is to be doers of the word. That's the point of all this. To pick up our cross and follow. Why bother? Well, one thing is 93% of the time for our nation, since 1776 to today, 93% of the time we have been at war. We've been fighting someone. All these little wars, you look them up and they're little ones, but we've been at war 93% of the time. And we're supposed to be the world leader. We're supposed to be peacekeepers. France strikes back. As soon as somebody strikes France, they strike back. Somebody strikes us, we get ready to strike back. But we don't realize who's pulling the strings, who's causing all these wars, what's going on behind the scenes. The spiritual battle that's taking on our world. Jesus says this, blessed are the peacekeepers. No, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God, the peacemakers. This is the peacekeeper. We have this missile that has 10 atomic warheads on it. That's a peacekeeper. But Jesus says the peacemakers. The Romans were peacekeepers. They had at one time 6,000 crucifixions going on a day. 6,000 a day. They were peacekeepers. Because if anybody caused any trouble, they could keep the peace, but they couldn't make it. For Jesus was the peacemaker. In fact, one of the Roman centurions who was out there crucifying the Jews, the people of Israel, came to Jesus and says, can you pray and bless and heal one of my servants? Jesus could have said, yeah, you start taking my people down off the cross, then I'll help you out. But Jesus says, go, it'll be done to you. And his servant was healed because Jesus was a peacemaker. And he says but I say to you to love your enemies, to do good that hate you, to bless those that curse you, to pray for those who mistreat you. That's a whole different level than, my bad, I'm sorry. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. I mean, you want us to do that, Jesus? You want us to actually do that? Bitterness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. And don't we run into people every day who harbor this bitterness, this poison inside them, waiting for it to take effect on someone else? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons and daughters of God. Peacemakers. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. I can think of a fellow right now that he and I needed to sit down and have some forgiving going on both our parts. We needed to sit down and have this meeting, but I just found out he died about a month ago, so that won't happen. That opportunity is gone. Peacemaking, it's forgiving, it's being forgiven, and it's not being roped into forgiving. It's not being pressured into like a pious sabotage or something where it makes you feel guilty. So you have to forgive somebody because they're making you feel so guilty. That's not what forgiving is. That's not the journey. It's not to get somebody off your back. It's not to cover up for something that you did, so you just kind of want to get it out of your way. To quickly apologize and move on to something else. Sometimes forgiving takes a while. Sometimes it's a long struggle. Sometimes it's greater than what we think it is. Peter was asking Jesus, well, Jesus, I'm starting to get what you're talking about, but I just want to make sure about this love your enemies and do good to those who hate you kind of thing. Okay, I can maybe do that once. And so is that kind of cool? It's kind of, I can tolerate people, and I can kind of give back some love. Is that what we're talking about here? Love and tolerance, because I really care about myself, and I don't want to, be full of bitterness. So it's about me. I want things to be cool. It's everything. But Jesus didn't say that, did he? He said, you know what it's like, Peter? It's like going out and finding a lost sheep. That's what we're talking about here. That's what forgiveness is like. It's like going out. It's about you going out to the one you harmed, or you going out to the one who harmed you and consider them a lost sheep. That's what forgiveness is like. Because it's different. Jesus said, look at it this way. It's like if somebody has 100 sheep and leaves one of them, they wander off. Doesn't he leave the 99 and go after that one? If he finds it, doesn't he make far more of it? You rejoice over the one instead of the 99. Jesus said, this is what forgiveness is like. When you bring back a brother or a sister or someone that you've lost. Don't you rejoice over that? The same way you would rejoice over a sheep. This isn't about sheep, it's about people. It's about forgiveness and being forgiven because you get back. And that's the goal of forgiveness, is to get back. It's not like, my bad, I'm sorry, never see you again. You stay on this side of the planet, I'll stay on this side. We just don't get along. That's not the point. That's not what Jesus is saying forgiveness is about. It's about a bridge. This is my favorite bridge as a child. It's called Thunder Bridge, because every time you rode your bike over it, it would sound like it was thundering out. So forgiveness is not just a conversation. It is a bridge. One of my favorite stories, it's about two brothers. See if you can relate to this one. Once upon a time, as good stories begin, this Lutheran farmer bequeathed his farm to two sons. At first, they worked together on the land, and they shared together the labor. They split the profits. As time passed, they built separate homes and raised their sons and daughters, divided the land, and had neighboring farms. It just grew so big. But sadly, they began to grow apart. The little things became bitter things and became bitter towards one another, and they spoke less and less. In fact, now they rarely spoke to one another over one little thing or the next. And one day, one took offense against the other and was outraged, and a bitter quarrel began. The older brother rose to see that a lake divided the land and appeared overnight. What was a meadow between their houses, no, this lake appeared. His brother's bulldozer sat over a pile of rocks that was ready to add more to it. And as rocks formed the curved wall that turned this quiet stream now into flood. And the older brother says, I'll do him one better. I'll call the nursery and I'll order a dozen 12-foot pine trees to block his view. And the day after the trees went in, the younger brother installed shutters to seal off the windows so his view really wasn't blocked. The older brother angrily countered by moving 6 hog houses upwind of his brother's house. And the younger brother replied by cutting off the water pipeline to the common spring. So the older brother went for the throat. The wooden bridge that allowed them to come on to the property, onto the shared road, the older brother called in a bulldozer to tear down the bridge, so they both would have to take the long highway road to get to the land. So he called for this wrecking company to drop the bridge. But the next morning, the younger brother came out and looked and saw this brand new, wider, beautiful bridge that was built, this wooden bridge with walkways on both sides. And he was staring at this thing, and he looked at his older brother, and he turned and saw him, and he ran towards him with an outstretched hand, and he says, I can't believe you would do this for us, brother. After all I've said and done for you, after all the nasty things I've done for you, you turn around and build this wonderful bridge for both of us. I can't believe you did this. This shows how big of a man you are to take this first step. I apologize for my behavior. And they seized each other's hand. They embraced. Just then, the carpenter came by and waved, leaving in his pickup. I hope this is what you guys really intended. Take care. I've got other bridges to build. That's what Jesus had in mind for forgiveness. Bridges that would bring people back together. Jesus said, if your brother has something against you, leave the altar. Don't even come to the altar with your gift. Go to him. Go to him and see what can be done. See what can be done. The fellow will leave a virtue. Tell him, work it out between the two of you. If he listens, you've made a friend. If he won't listen, well, take 2 others along. Try it again. Maybe he'll listen this time. And if he doesn't listen, well, try it again. And if he won't listen, then go to the church and tell them, have them pray for you guys. And try it again. And if that doesn't work, Father's house, no, start from scratch, go and do it again. Start again and again and again. Peter said, I was just asking the question, Lord, how many times do I have to forgive? Well, it sounds like this whole forgiveness thing doesn't go away. It's 70 times 7. It doesn't quit. It's not just once. It's not just taking 2 people and then try it again. It's not like having a little church involved. If that doesn't work, you start again from scratch. And you do it again and again and again. The 70 times 7 means you never quit. There's no quitting to this stuff. You can't quit forgiveness. Never. We don't call people out and say, you've had your 3 chances. You're done. I've done my best. Let's agree to disagree. Let's just agree to hate each other. That doesn't work with Jesus. That's not peacekeeping. That's not what Jesus had in mind for us. For us, his body. If you won't listen, tell the church. Let them pray. If they won't listen to the church, start from scratch. Do it again. Confront them with the need for repentance. And offer them God's forgiving love. Again and again and again. It never quits. Never quits. On both ends, for us and for them. Jesus told this parable. He said, well, there was one man who was owed so much money he couldn't possibly repay it. It was in the millions of dollars. And so he begs and says, I can't possibly repay you. And so the man who was owed all his money says, don't worry about it. You're forgiven. Be blessed. Go on your way. So on the road, he sees somebody owes him $50. He says, come here. Come here. That money you owe me, I want it now. I want it now. Who've been forgiven millions of dollars. Now, $50. Don't forgive. Think of the cross. We have no idea what we owe God. We don't even have a clue what we owe God. But for $100, 500, maybe 1,000, call it 10,000, maybe 50,000. Somebody went into a bad business deal. Somebody owes you 50,000. Does that compare to the billions we owe God? Billions? And we won't forgive, but we've been forgiven. Isn't that the Lord's prayer in action? These are the tools of forgiveness. They should have been applied to us. Jesus is a peacemaker between God and us. Jesus became a peacemaker. So, what does he tell us to do? Pick up our cross and be peacemakers too. Pick up our cross and be forgivers. And he has forgiven. To be like Christ. Not just hearers, but doers. Do what? Forgive. Because that's what we're called to. That's what the Lord first calling us to do. To forgive. To be forgivers. Pastor Ken, you don't know how I've been hurt. You don't know my situation. I know it's bad. And I know it's hard. But Jesus is the peacemaker. And with him, nothing is possible. We can't do that on our own. And I'm not telling you we can do it on our own. But with Christ, we can discover that all things are possible. Things that we can't do. Because of the peacemaker who will lead us and guide us. Because again, there'll never be world peace. We are a nation at war. We are a nation who likes to fight. We like our bullets. We like our guns. In a world that we have, we're geared up to be fighters because we're the best. But through Christ, all things are possible. There'll never be peace in the Middle East. The Palestinians and Jews, they hate each other. They've always hated each other. They will always hate each other. But through Christ, all things are possible. That's what Jesus tells us. So we can either say, Jesus, we trust you, or we don't. And then we go on our way and we do something else. But if we want to be doers of the word, not just hearers, if we want to be doers, then we got to do. We got to be doers of the word. And that's the word's bridge. Maybe there's nobody on the other side of you. Maybe there is. Maybe this year there will be. Don't be just hearers. Because you deceive yourself, James says. You're kidding yourself. You're fooling yourself. If you're just listening to this stuff and going on your way, you're just looking in the mirror and forgetting yourself. You've got to be a doer. That's what we're called to be doers of the word. There's somebody waiting for you on the other side of the bridge. Who could that be? This is the beginning of peacemaking. It starts with beginning. We'll see what God takes us this year. I think it's going to be exciting. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Receive our tithes, Father.